Hi, I'm Charlie. Thank you for spending a little time with me today. Every story I share comes from a moment that changed how I understood myself, my family, or the world around me. Today's story is about my sister Renata, and about a Tuesday evening that started out completely ordinary and ended up being one of the most important conversations of my life. I still remember the day it happened, though for a long time I tried to convince myself it was just another evening. Nothing special, nothing worth remembering. But the truth is, I've thought about it more than almost anything else from those years, because it was the day someone I loved finally saw me. Not looked at me, saw me. I grew up in a small house on Linden Street, the kind of house where you could hear every conversation through the walls if you weren't careful, where the floors creaked in specific places that all four of us kids had memorized so we could sneak around at night. There were four of us, Marcus the oldest, then me, then Renata, then little Theo, who came along almost 6 years after Renata and was treated like a small miracle by everyone, especially our mother. My father worked at the regional distribution center. Long shifts, steady hands, a man who believed deeply in routine and in not making a fuss about things. My mother taught 3rd grade and came home every day smelling like dry erase markers and the inside of a supply closet, a smell I still find strangely comforting decades later. I was what people called a sensitive kid. I cried at movies. I noticed when people were sad before they said anything. I liked drawing more than I liked sports, though I played soccer because Marcus played soccer, and it felt easier to follow a path someone had already worn smooth than to cut my own. Nobody in my family was unkind to me. Not ever, not really. But there was a specific kind of quiet that settled over rooms sometimes when I did things that didn't fit the shape they expected. Nothing dramatic, just a pause, a look exchanged between my parents. The kind of thing a kid notices even if they can't name it. Renata was 2 years younger than me, and from the time she could talk, she was fierce in a way I admired and envied. She said what she thought. She wanted to be a marine biologist by age 7 and never wavered from it, not once, all the way through to actually becoming one. She didn't care what people thought of her opinions, her grades, her hair, anything. I used to watch her stride through the world like it owed her nothing, and wonder what that kind of certainty felt like from the inside. We shared a bathroom growing up, Renata and me, while Marcus and Theo shared the other one. And that small accident of house geometry ended up mattering more than anyone could have guessed. It meant Renata saw things. She saw the lip balm I bought that was tinted a little pink and told everyone, including myself, that it was just for chapped lips. She saw me lingering in front of the mirror sometimes in ways that had nothing to do with vanity and everything to do with trying to figure out who was looking back at me. She never said anything about it when we were younger. I used to think she hadn't noticed. I know now that she noticed everything and simply hadn't decided yet what to do with what she'd seen. The clothes started small, the way these things usually do. I was maybe 11 when I first tried on one of my mother's scarves in front of the mirror, just to see, just out of some pull I couldn't explain and didn't try very hard to understand at the time. It felt like trying on a feeling rather than trying on fabric. I put it back exactly where I found it and didn't think about it again for almost a year. Or at least I told myself I didn't think about it. The way you tell yourself you're not thinking about something while thinking about almost nothing else. By the time I was 13, I had a small collection of things hidden in the bottom of an old backpack pushed to the back of my closet. A soft green cardigan I'd bought secondhand with allowance money, claiming it was for a school project. A pair of earrings I'd found at the bottom of a thrift store bin, clip-ons because I was too afraid to ask anyone about getting my ears pierced. Nothing dramatic, nothing anyone would have called a costume, just small, quiet pieces of something I didn't have words for yet. Things that made me feel, for the few minutes I wore them alone in my room, like the air fit my lungs a little better. I want to be honest with you about how scared I was during those years. Not scared of monsters or punishment exactly, though some of that fear was in there too. Scared in a deeper way, the way you're scared when you suspect that something true about yourself might cost you the people you love most. I had absorbed, without anyone ever sitting me down and saying it directly, a sense that this thing I felt was supposed to stay hidden. Nobody had to say it. The world says it in 1,000 small ways, in jokes on television, in the particular way a teacher's voice changed when a boy at school wore something his classmates decided was wrong, in the silence that followed certain topics at the dinner table. Renata found the backpack when I was 14. I came home from soccer practice to find her sitting on my bed, the cardigan in her lap, her face doing something I couldn't quite read. My stomach dropped so fast and so completely that I thought I might actually be sick right there in the doorway. I wasn't snooping, she said, which was, knowing Renata, almost certainly a lie, but a kind one. I was looking for my charger. I think you borrowed it. I didn't say anything. I just stood there with my cleats still on, grass stains on my socks, feeling like every cell in my body wanted to run. "It's a nice color on you," she said finally. "I bet." I still don't fully understand why those particular words from a 12-year-old undid me the way they did, but I sat down on the floor of my own bedroom and cried harder than I had in years. Not sad crying exactly, more like something that had been held underwater for a long time finally breaking the surface. Renata didn't hug me, because that wasn't really her way, but she sat down next to me on the floor, cross-legged, the cardigan still in her lap, and she stayed there until I stopped shaking. She didn't ask a single question that day. She just said, "Okay," like I'd told her something simple, like the weather, like what time practice ended. Then she helped me fold the cardigan back up and put the backpack where it had been, and we never spoke about it again for almost 4 years. I used to wonder in the years after whether her silence had been a kindness or a kind of fear of her own. I think now it was probably both, and I think that's true of most of the silences in families. They're rarely as simple as people not caring. Renata was 12. She'd been handed something enormous, and she did the only thing she knew how to do with it, which was hold it carefully and not drop it. High school was its own particular kind of survival. I leaned hard into the things that felt safe: soccer, decent grades, a small group of friends who liked the same music I did and didn't ask too many questions. I dated a girl named Priya for almost a year, sophomore into junior year, and I want to say clearly that I cared about her, that it wasn't a performance in the way people sometimes imagine these things must be. It was real, just incomplete. The way a sentence can be grammatically correct and still be missing the word that would have made it true. I kept the backpack. I added to it slowly. A blouse here, a necklace there, things bought from second-hand shops 2 towns over where nobody would recognize me. Things I wore alone in my room, with the door locked and the curtains drawn, feeling something I can only describe as relief. The specific relief of taking off a coat you didn't realize was too tight until it was finally off. My father found out, sort of, when I was 16. Though "found out" makes it sound more dramatic than what actually happened. He walked into my room without knocking, which he almost never did, looking for a tool he thought I'd borrowed, and saw me in the doorway of my closet, wearing a soft yellow cardigan I'd bought weeks before. We looked at each other for what felt like an hour, and was probably 4 seconds. He said, "Sorry, didn't mean to barge in," and closed the door. We didn't talk about it. Not that night, not that month. Not for a long time. But something shifted in small ways afterward. He started knocking before entering my room, every single time, without exception, which felt at first like distance, and which I understood much later as a kind of respect he didn't have other language for. My father was not a man who processed things out loud. He processed them by adjusting his behavior quietly and hoping the adjustment spoke for him. It took me years to learn to read that dialect of love, but once I did, I found it everywhere in him. It was Renata, in the end, who brought everything into the light, though brought into the light undersells how gently she actually did it. I was 18, a few months from leaving for college, and home felt different that year in the way it does when you can feel an ending approaching and don't know yet what's on the other side of it. Renata was 16, sharp as ever, deep into a marine biology obsession that had her room covered in posters of bioluminescent creatures and tide charts. We were doing dishes together one evening, our parents out at Theo's school thing, just the two of us and the sound of water running and plates clinking. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Not really a question, more like an announcement that a question was coming. "And you can tell me to shut up." "Okay." "Do you still have the cardigan? The green one?" I almost dropped the plate I was holding. 4 years of silence, and she just walked right back into it like no time had passed at all. "Yeah," I said. "I have a few more things now, too." She nodded slowly, drying a bowl that was probably already dry. "I figured. I wasn't trying to make you talk about it back then. I didn't know what to say. I was 12. I just didn't want you to feel like I was going to tell anyone or make it weird." "You didn't." "Is it like a costume thing? Or is it more—" She paused, searching for words the way Renata rarely had to. "Is it more like it feels true? Like it's not a costume, it's just you?" I set down the dish towel because my hands needed something to stop doing. "It feels true," I said. "I don't fully understand it yet. I'm not sure I have the right words for it. But when I put something on that feels right, I don't feel like I'm pretending to be someone else. I feel like I'm finally not pretending." Renata was quiet for a moment, and I watched her turn that sentence over in her mind the way she turned over every piece of information, carefully, from multiple angles, like she was checking it against everything else she knew to be true. "Okay," she said. Same word as 4 years earlier, but it landed completely differently this time. This "okay" had thought behind it, history behind it. 4 years of quiet observation distilled into a single small syllable. "Okay," I repeated, needing more than that. "I mean, it's okay. Like, obviously it's okay. I just want to understand it because I love you and I don't want to say the wrong thing by accident." She dried her hands on her jeans even though they were already dry, a nervous habit she'd had since she was small. "Can I ask you something else?" "Yeah." "Do you want to be a girl? Like, is that the actual thing, or is it something else? I don't want to assume." I appreciated that question more than I could say at the time, because so many people, when they finally do ask in a way that's really just trying to fit you into a category they already understand, a box with a label they already have ready. Renata's question had no box waiting. It was a genuinely open hand. "I don't fully know yet," I told her honestly. "I know that when I wear certain things, when I let myself be a little softer, a little more like this, I feel more like myself than I do most of the time. I don't know if that means I'm a girl who got born in the wrong body, or if it means something else entirely, something in between, something that doesn't have a tidy name. I'm still figuring it out. I think I might be figuring it out for a long time." She nodded again, that same careful nod. "That's allowed," she said, "taking a long time to figure something out. Nobody should be rushing you." We finished the dishes in a silence that felt, for the first time in my life, completely unburdened. Not the silence of things unsaid, but the silence of things finally said and now simply settling, like dust after a window's been opened for the first time in years. A week later, she knocked on my door, actually knocked, which she almost never did since we'd shared a bathroom our whole lives and barely respected closed doors as a concept. And she was holding a small box. "I got you something," she said. "It's stupid, don't make it weird." Inside was a pair of earrings, small silver hoops, nothing extravagant, the kind of thing you could wear anywhere without anyone looking twice. "I figured the clip-ons probably pinch," she said. "And I know you've never gotten your ears pierced because you were scared to ask Mom. So, I don't know. I thought maybe I could go with you, if you wanted." I don't think I've ever cried over a pair of earrings before or since, but I cried over those, standing in my doorway, my little sister looking simultaneously proud of herself and terrified she'd overstepped. "You didn't overstep," I told her, because I could see the fear under the pride. "This is, Renata, This is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me." "It's just earrings," she said, but she was smiling in a way that told me she knew it wasn't just earrings at all. We got my ears pierced that weekend at a little shop downtown, Renata holding my hand through both clicks of the piercing gun, narrating facts about cartilage healing time the entire car ride home, in a way that I understood, even then, was her particular language for love. Facts offered like flowers, information offered like comfort. Telling my parents came slower, and it came in pieces, the way most real things do rather than the single dramatic announcement people imagine from movies. My mother cried the first time I told her. Not from anger, she was careful to clarify through her tears, but from some complicated grief about a version of my future she'd quietly pictured without ever realizing she'd been picturing it. My father, true to form, said almost nothing in the moment and then, 3 days later, left a folded newspaper article on my desk about a local support group for families, with no note, no explanation, just the article and his particular brand of silent, sideways love. Marcus took longer to come around. Not from cruelty, but from confusion. The kind that comes from a worldview that's never had to stretch in this particular direction before. Theo, 11 years old at the time, asked exactly one question. "Does this mean I get to call you something different?" And when I said he could call me whatever felt right to him, he shrugged and said, "Okay, Charlie's fine," and went back to his video game. And somehow, that simple, undramatic acceptance from an 11-year-old meant more than I can easily explain. But it was Renata who'd cracked the door open first, who'd done the hardest and least celebrated work of all, which was simply paying attention for years without forcing anything, and then meeting me exactly where I already was the moment I was ready to be met there. I think about that dish towel conversation more than almost any other memory from my whole life. Not because it was the most dramatic moment. It wasn't, by a wide margin. But because it taught me something about love that I don't think I understood before that night. Love isn't always declarations. Sometimes it's a 12-year-old quietly keeping a secret she didn't fully understand because she sensed it mattered. Sometimes it's a question asked with an open hand instead of a waiting box. Sometimes it's a small pair of earrings and an offer to hold your hand through something scary. I'm older now, and the road since that kitchen conversation has had its own twists, its own slow unfoldings, things I'm sure I'll tell you about another time. But that Tuesday evening, with the dishes and the running water, stays with me as the moment I first understood that being known, truly known, by even one person who loves you, can be enough light to keep walking by for a very long time. Renata still sends me articles about deep-sea creatures sometimes, completely unprompted, the same way she once narrated cartilage healing facts in the car. It's still her language. I understand it fully now. It means I see you. It means I'm still paying attention. It means, in the only dialect she's ever really needed, I love you exactly as you are. Thank you for listening to my story. If something in my journey reminded you of your own, I hope you remember that being understood often starts with one person choosing patience over judgment, and that the people who truly love us are usually paying closer attention than we realize. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you again in the next story. I'm Charlie.